You live, we die. This is the message from communities in Colombia to people in Ireland. There's an enormous coal mine in the north of the country which is being used by the ESB to supply fuel to power the Irish national grid. And according to groups in the north of Colombia, that mine has caused an environmental crisis. Activist Luke Holland has authored this report for Primetime.
This is a story about the coal used to keep the lights on in Ireland, to feed our biggest power plant. It's a story about death and illness, corporate power and indigenous communities driven towards extinction. And it starts 7,000 kilometres off the west coast in Colombia.
El agua nos marca el andar y el subsistir, porque nos dice qué debemos hacer y cómo lo debemos hacer.
Leobardo Sierra is an indigenous community leader in a remote region of northern Colombia.
Que hay más de 2,000 personas dependiendo directamente de estas aguas. Estas aguas las utilizamos para todo, o sea, para el consumo, para lavar, bañarnos, para en caso de alimentar a los animales, para regar cultivos, para la parte cultural y espiritual que también se utiliza. Entonces, para todo necesitamos estas aguas.
For Leobardo and locals like Yelenis Medina, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find any such clean sources of water. In the past few decades, many of them have been rerouted and dammed up. As a result, the land on which their communities trace centuries of history has been destroyed.
El medio ambiente acá, anteriormente, cuando yo era pequeña, nosotros esto era mucho pasto, mucha paja. Pero mire cómo está ahora está totalmente seco, ya el pasto no nace.
Yelenis walked me along the dried, stony route of what, just a few years ago, was a river.
Esa piedra nosotros nos lanzábamos de esa piedra. Y había personas que se montaban a ese árbol para tirarse de ahí arriba al... ¡Miren!
She led me out onto the roads as we discussed the source of that destruction, the largest coal mine in Latin America.
Tenemos las 24 horas del día, el ruido de los camiones, la polución y la carbonilla. El agua se nos está secando, el agua está contaminada de carbonilla y de polución. Nosotros no las estamos tomando así.
The Cerrejón mine, a vast operation the size of County Louth, provides some employment and revenue. But locals say the jobs are limited, the revenue drives corruption, and the money, like the water, never trickles back to improve their lives.
Vemos que los estados avanzan, las políticas de gobierno avanzan y las políticas empresariales avanzan. Y las comunidades siguen igual de pobres, seguimos muriéndonos de hambre, muriéndonos de sed, quedándonos sin agua.
The Cerrejón mine has grown massively since first opening in the 1980s. For decades, from 2001 onwards, the bulk of the coal used to power the Irish national grid through the Money Point power plant came directly from here, millions of tons of coal. Deliveries were typically made 4 times each year. That was until 2018, when the ships stopped coming to Ireland. Pressure from human rights groups led the ESB to seek alternative sources of coal. In the meantime, the Colombian Ombudsman for Human Rights has attributed the deaths of 5,000 local children to an environmental crisis caused, in large part, by the operations of the mine. Campaigners and community leaders say the actual figure is triple that.
Hay comunidades enteras enfermas, hay niños y niñas que han muerto en causa de la contaminación del aire. Hay unas afectaciones al equilibrio ecológico, todas las afectaciones que se han generado en su territorio por parte del megaproyecto y de la empresa Carbones del Cerrejón.
For years, activists and campaigners believed no Colombian coal was being imported into Ireland. That was until late last year when this photo appeared online. It's of a ship linked to the Cerrejón mine docked in Money Point. The ESB then confirmed that Colombian coal was back. Primetime has since established the deliveries actually restarted in early 2022, and there have been 6 in total since. Colombian coal, again powering our national grid.
Pero finalmente el carbón que está llegando a Europa es un carbón que está manchado con sangre. Es un carbón que lleva el llanto de un montón de madres que son las que tienen que atender las situaciones de salud de sus hijos sin ningún tipo de apoyo. El carbón colombiano es un carbón denunciado.
Va manchada de sangre porque es un carbón que se está extrayendo, violando derechos, no cumpliendo con ningún estándar internacional de derechos humanos. No hay justicia económica en la forma de comprar y vender el carbón. No hay ninguna retribución justa a los territorios a donde se desarrollan este tipo de extractivismo violento, además.
I went to Colombia to hear the stories of impacted communities. What they told me is that they are dying so that we in Europe can live in comfort.
Ustedes quieren vivir una vida de reyes a costilla de la energía que nos está causando la muerte aquí en territorio. Y no me parece. Ustedes son unos inconscientes. Y me perdonan, pero eso está causando que nos mate a nosotros. Y no es justo que nuestros animales, nuestro territorio, nuestros familiares mueran a causa de lo que para ustedes es felicidad. Me parece injusto. Me parece injusto lo que ustedes están haciendo con nosotros aquí en nuestro territorio. No es justo.
And that report from Luke Holland. Now, in response to queries about the issues raised in that piece, Glencore, the Switzerland-based company which owns the Colombian mine, told us that it regularly monitors water quality through an accredited institute and that results show compliance with national regulations for each water body. It says the overwhelming majority of water is used by the agricultural sector and that it supports rigorous social, labour and environmental practices and seeks to align its practices to international standards. For its part, the ESB told us that it has always taken its responsibilities in relation to coal procurement very seriously. It says since 2018, ESB coal purchases from the Cerrejón mine have been very limited. In total, since 2018, ESB's purchase of coal sourced from the Cerrejón mine amounted to about 1% of the total produced by the mine. It says it is a member of an organisation called Better Coal, which, it says, ensures activities at the Cerrejón are assessed and monitored on an ongoing basis against 12 key principles, including human rights, workers' rights, environment, pollution, biodiversity and compliance with laws and regulations. Finally, it added that it is not anticipating any further shipments of coal from the Cerrejón to Moneypoint. Well, for more on all of this, we're joined now in studio by Conor O'Neill, Head of Advocacy and Policy at Christian Aid. And Conor, you're welcome to the programme. Before I ask you about the ESB specifically, I understand that one of the women that we saw there in Luke's report has since passed away.
Yeah, we received very sad news. She was an incredible woman, incredible activist. Her name was Jacqueline Romero, one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. We just learned very recently that she passed away. She dedicated her life to working with some of the most marginalised people and communities in La Guajira in this region, and to really highlight the injustice that viewers would have seen in the previous clip. And I think it would mean a huge amount to her, her community and her family to know that even posthumously, her words are still with us, speaking truth to power and challenging what's happening.
OK, so in terms of what's happening then and where we're at, the ESB has said that it has agreed to take part in a mediation process. This is on foot of the OECD complaint. What are you hoping will emerge from that mediation process, or how will it work?
So this is a complaint that we have lodged ourselves, our Colombian partners and a brilliant legal advocacy organisation called GLAN. And what we've essentially done is submitted evidence and research that very much does not correspond with what the companies claim, that shows the impacts. And what might happen out of that is that this corporate accountability watchdog essentially will look at that evidence. It might begin, hopefully, a process of mediation between between the communities impacted directly and the companies themselves. And we hope that that can try and bring some sort of improvement or resolution. And really the point of this complaint and this process is to spur action. We want the company, we want the ESB as a purchaser to permanently terminate its commercial relationship with Cerrejón because of those harms. And crucially, we want them to state publicly that it's not just the bottom line commercial reasons as usual, that those human rights concerns are first and foremost in their minds. That is something that can put pressure on other energy companies to do the same.
Okay.
And we want them to contribute to restitution of that land and try and help those communities respond and rebuild.
On the first part of what you're asking there, the ESB has said, as I mentioned there in its statement, that it does intend to finish burning any further shipments of coal from Cerrejón to Moneypoint.
Yes, and I think the important thing to know there is that whether the ESB stops purchasing and burning coal from 2025 or not, it doesn't undo the fact that over 20 years, 2 decades, it has purchased and burned millions of tonnes of coal from this mine, and in doing so contributed to the demand and those harms that we've seen. But secondly, that idea that after 20 years, the large energy companies from Europe like the ESB and Glencore, the owner of the mine, can see the way the wind is blowing and are now kind of going to wash their hands and walk away is precisely what the communities themselves are really afraid of.
So a transition fund is the big ask then, is it, to try and help the communities?
If not, they are going to be left picking up the pieces. They will be left dealing with scarred earth, polluted water, children with respiratory problems, unless these companies. And it's worth noting that last year the ESB recorded profits of around €870 million. Okay. Glencore, who gave that statement, recorded record profits and paid €6.5 billion in dividends to investors, at the same time that there are children in La Guajira who don't have access to clean drinking water.
All right, it's a story we'll certainly follow, and thank you very much for joining us this evening, Conor O'Neill.